We've been around since about 2014, and we were founded really with a passion for both flavor and technology. With the emergence of this industry, right around the same time where I personally started vaping, I found it to be quite interesting in the way that it's a whole new world of flavor. It was briefly touched on before, but especially with this new age and the new age of business, with everyone wanting to be very personalized, I found that the potentials with the flavors are something that we have never seen up till now. Previous to this, I was a business consultant. I focused on business process engineering. I worked a lot with fraud mitigation and efficiency within growing companies. I work mainly with small to medium-sized businesses, navigating the challenges of growing from 5 employees to about 50 employees. Today, the few topics I want to be covering is basically what is an ERP system, why do we need it, and how can it help us navigate this challenging landscape of vaping. Some of the interesting challenges that we've come across over the last few years, we'll try to touch on those and kind of introduce a new way of hopefully thinking about what an ERP system is. So I'll start with basic history on what an ERP system is. Basically, enterprise resource planning is what an ERP system stands for. And ERP systems basically started around the 1990s to replace the old manufacturing resource planning systems from the mid-century. So as you can imagine, after World War II, there was a large demand for manufactured products, of course, cars included in there. And with everyone trying to drive innovation, drive profits to their businesses, they started incorporating more and more machinery into their business. Now with machinery came more complexities, which brought the requirements for more software. And so around the 90s, they had coined the term ERP system to kind of make the transition from the old manufacturing systems to systems that were more geared to a variety of industries. So it was around the 1990s when they started diving into other industries, and of course, with all innovation, with all demand drives more and more innovation. And so we started seeing these packages creeping into all the industries. What benefits do software bring? So in the 50s and the 60s, car manufacturers, for example, they were always looking for ways on how they could increase their margins, because there's only so much they could sell for. But increased margins, I'm sure everyone here, I don't need to explain what increased margins means. But especially for small to medium-sized businesses in expanding industries, this means more capital, to take more risks, to have more ability to put out fires, and to navigate the scalability problems that every small company faces. Over the last 20 years, since the year 2000 or so, as the bandwidth for internet started becoming more, we started seeing the introduction of cloud-based software. And I think this is probably where there was a significant shift, because before the year 2000, a lot of the software that enterprises were looking at were large-scale software. They required teams of professionals to implement them, and they're usually for larger companies. But with the rise of the internet, there was the rise of the subscription model, and this is where you started seeing where you can't go and buy Microsoft Office, for example. It's all on the subscription model. And so with the introduction of the subscription model, this made it more viable for smaller companies to get on board and to start making their processes more efficient. If you look at every single industry, for example, car rental industry, you look at transportation industry, 20, 30 years ago, there was a significant involvement for travel agents. Now, anyone who's traveling, I'm sure, has used services like Uber, Hotels.com, and other cloud-based software. So as cloud-based software has come more and more into the business world, it's really changed the way that we navigate all of the different industries. Other things that have really changed the way that the entire structure of enterprises is the social media. Social media has really done a lot of changes with the marketing aspects. And so with social media and the rise of social media comes that really we've entered into a digital phase of the world. And with the digital phase requires a robust infrastructure to facilitate the quick changes that we're constantly seeing, especially in an industry like vaping. One of the biggest challenges that we saw from the beginning was the complexity of the industry, both with the SKUs as well as the trends. Especially in Canada back in 2014, we would see trends rise and fall extremely quickly. And with that, companies would try to follow the trends constantly, and this was always a challenge because for often products in the vaping industry, it's not you're releasing one product. When you release one product, it comes in all the different SKUs. So one flavor could potentially add up to 20, 30, 40 different SKUs. Now, in the ideal world, you have enough capital to just dump inventory for every single SKU. But in reality, the most of capital is required, and to facilitate that is where we turn to software. So what exactly does an ERP system cover? The four basic components of an ERP system is, of course, human resources, so managing time, managing the pay, managing the arrangements with the different contractors and employees you have, managing the information that they carry, different logins, different credentials, etc. You have the material resources, so where exactly is your products in the production cycle, what's your inventory looking like, how is everything being shipped, where exactly is everything in the process, how easy is it to get these numbers at the end of the month, end of the year, etc. Capital resources, how effectively are the capital resources being used? Like I said in the previous example, in an ideal world, you have unlimited capital and you can start sticking into everything. But ideally, this should be fairly monitored. And so how can we actually check on what is being done with the capital? How well is it being used? Where's the ROI coming from? And then the last thing, of course, is the operational efficiency. So that kind of ties in with the capital resources. How well is the company utilizing the resources, both time and labor? Time is one that's often overlooked, and one of the things that I'll touch on is the kind of the age of cyborgs. I call it the age of cyborgs because we're in an age where we're not only so connected, but our time has become more and more valuable. Going back to the 50s, you take an example of car manufacturing. A factory without machines, for example, each individual is putting out an output of one. Now, over the last 60 years, you can imagine that the individual output of one individual has gone up so significantly that what they call the cyborg age, time is so valuable that we really have to make sure that we're not only just connected, but we're optimizing the collaboration between the team and making sure that we are streamlined so that as we move forward and navigate through these challenging landscapes, we're not truly wasting resources. ERP systems really affect the scalability. So again, going back to the example of car manufacturing, one of the challenges that often people have in management is, okay, for example, we're producing 100 cars a day and we have 100 employees. Now, if we were to increase our capacity, or we want to increase our capacity to 100 cars a day, what does that actually mean? Often it's not just a simple equation where 100 employees equals 100 cars, 200 employees equals 200 cars. Anyone in management has seen there's often complexities that come just by adding people. So if you add another 100 employees, what are the problems and challenges that come with that? Are you ready to face those fires? Do you have enough firefighters standing by to put these problems out? And so that's really where the scalability aspect comes in, is looking at your system and seeing how scalable is it, how easily can you grow, and how easily can you watch for fires. And so in my previous experience, one of the biggest challenges that small businesses face is they imagine systems, they imagine a way that things should flow, and ideally it works, on paper it works, but when you really put it into place, all these little areas where things can go wrong often usually do go wrong. And the problem is all those things happen on one day and it becomes something that could be potentially catastrophic. So individually, all those little issues are fine, but combined, they're not okay. And so that's where really, in terms of scalability, looking at it as how easily can we manage all the potential fires that will come with the growth? Are we ready to fight that? And do we have systems in place to prevent those from happening? This is a lot of times where people also kind of don't really take into consideration the scalability aspect of their systems. So for example, you're starting out your company and you have in mind that you want to be at 50 employees in the next 2 years. From the day you start the company, you should never be thinking about systems that will work for 5 employees. You should always be thinking of where you're trying to go and building it out that way. So if you've got a goal and you're saying to yourself, I will have 50 employees, so this is the goal you're going towards, build a system that can accommodate 50 people. Don't create it for 5, and then as you're going, you do band-aid solutions, still kind of everything's there, but it's barely working, and you're constantly waiting for those fires to come up so you can keep putting them out. And eventually you just end up in a circle, just kind of not going anywhere, just putting out fires as quickly as they're coming up. Another big aspect of ERP systems is mitigating fraud and mitigating risk and reducing fraud. There was a client I had a couple of years ago before I got into vaping. They were an electrician, they were an electrical company. They used to do electrical contracting. So they had been around for quite a few years, family-run business. And what they had done is they had a programmer in the family. So they had some basic knowledge about creating a system. And so they'd gone ahead and created a system. The problem that they had is they hadn't created enough checks and balances. And so being a smaller company, there was about 15 of them, they had given quite a lot of responsibility to their secretary. Nobody really checked on what she was doing, and so a couple of years had gone by, and it was about 3 years into it that we were brought in. And so at the time, they were feeling a little uncertain. They weren't fully suspicious of what she was doing, but they felt that there was something weird going on. They couldn't make sense of things, and they had been given the runaround too many times. So when we went in there, we took a look at things, and basically what she had done is she had just manipulated the system in a way that, no system is perfect, and especially without the checks and balances, it's very easily manipulated. She had full access to all the things that she needed to, and so for the few years that she was there, after we had finished our audits, she had taken approximately $100,000 per year. Now, for a company that's 15 employees, $100,000 a year is significant. And so they were always wondering why their cash problems were always there. And after this came out, obviously we were able to fix it and go on with it. But looking back at what they had already suffered, all the damage that had already been done, there's nothing they could do about it. The only recourse they had was to take it to criminal court. But again, especially in Canada, there's not much that they can do. There was no really recourse, and really the insurance that they got was a fraction of what their loss was. And then there's other things you can't even quantify. There's the compounding effect of all the money they lost, as well as the time. They spent approximately a year just figuring out what had happened, catching up to where all the money had been lost, and redoing their system to kind of get ready for the new person to come in. So often, scalability, fraud, all these things, they really should be thought about before the system is put into place to make sure that you don't have these issues down the road. Different components. So I briefly kind of covered it, but to give you a little bit more detail on what exactly is covered by an ERP. Often people quite ask me the question, like, what is an ERP? To summarize, it's basically your virtual electronic database, or your virtual mind of what is contained in your company. So you have things like finance. What do the accountants need to know? Your AP, your AR, your general ledgers. You have your e-commerce platforms, so your different websites, project management, collaboration, so you have events, you have different projects going on in the company. How are you collaborating? How are you guys sharing files? The manufacturing side, so how do you connect with your different people in the production side, production managers, engineers, accountants, costing, etc. CRM, how well do your salespeople have access to the information they need? So on the CRM side, you would have customer information, invoicing, billing, all that. Now, different things you can ask yourself is looking at all these different components is look at your own company and say, okay, I'm sitting in, for example, sales. How easily can I access the required information I need for production? Do I know when my client's information or products are going out? Do I know when there's back orders? Do I know all this information? Supply chain, compliance, those are both take care of anything to do with your different components of your supply chain. Compliance is often to do with batch tracking, especially for our industry. Batch traceability is a very important one, just being able to recall potential batches. HR, so what are the HR information that you need to have, your time logs, your pay information, tax information, that sort of thing. And then management, of course, everything in this system, the whole purpose is for the management reports to see how well you're doing, what's the health of your company at the current time, and also to give you insight on how to make the best decision going forward. Constantly in management, you're faced with decisions that you have to make, and I find that one of the most important things is, of course, having the right information, making decisions based on garbage information brings you garbage results. So basically, to sum it all, these are the different moving parts of an ERP. ERP is often loosely thrown around as a term, especially going into 2019. What people would think of when you say ERP in the 1990s versus what you think of now. Now we are in a new phase of ERP. You're not restricted to these large software that take years to pull in and that need large teams. You often can get some software that takes care of the core and supplement it with other software that can tag on really easily. With all the different formats that they have of sharing information between the software, oftentimes it's not even required for the manufacturers themselves to do any coding. It's fairly easy to transfer data between softwares, and this is imperative in the flow of an ERP system. The ERP system, it doesn't matter if you have all these different components, but they don't speak to each other. If sales has to make 10 phone calls to find out where his product is in the whole system, it's a complete waste of time. You should have access to different areas. So again, to think about your ERP, it's almost like your digital workplace. So if someone is sitting in the sales office, how easily can he access the information that's in the operational office? Is it a big challenge? Is he going through a bunch of roadblocks? Is he constantly having connection issues, or is it something like he can be on the phone, he can bring out his laptop, and within 5 minutes answer any questions that he's dealing with his client? And so this goes back to the efficiency side. As our time has become more valuable, it's become more and more imperative that we eliminate these things that eat up our time. You take 100 phone calls in one day and you eliminate that by 75%. A lot of those phone calls are completely useless. And especially with this new connected age, a lot of the information, a lot of phone calls that are being taken, or a lot of the emails that are requesting information that's already contained within the boundaries of our digital world or our digital workplace. So it shouldn't be required to query this information constantly. It should be readily accessible by whatever members that need that information. So the age of cyborgs. I know a lot of people, when they hear this term, they think movies, they think very futuristic, but it truly is that we are in an age of cyborgs now. No other time in history would I be able to ask anybody in this room, and they'd be able to answer any math question on ones that I could ask. Right now, there really isn't any point to ask the question because anyone can just pull out their phone and through Google, you can answer anything. You can talk to people on the other side of the world. You can right now find out what's the best food to have and have it to you within the next 30 minutes. So we live in